I got to be honest with you right out of the gate here. When I first saw the pitch for this deep dive, my immediate reaction was to just roll my eyes.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
I mean, look at the premise, right?
Yeah.
We are taking ChaanAİkya, who is basically the Indian Machiavelli, this ruthless strategist from 2,400 years ago, and we are mashing him up with modern artificial
He
intelligence.
sounds like a total tech bro gimmick.
Exactly. And if that wasn't enough, the project name is ChaanAİkya, with a capital AI wedged right in the middle. On paper, it feels like this forced marriage, like trying to mix oil and water just to get a cool acronym for a slide deck.
Right, but skepticism is good here. In fact, skepticism is arguably the very first step in the framework we're diving into today. Because I think your reaction to the name is exactly what they anticipated.
You think they wanted people to roll their eyes?
I think they know it looks like a marketing gimmick, but
Yep.
once you get past that branding and actually read the source code documents, you realize this isn't some weird collision of eras. It's a rescue mission.
A rescue mission. Okay, that sounds a bit dramatic for a strategy framework. Who exactly are we rescuing?
Well, we aren't rescuing a person. We're rescuing logic. The creators of this framework call it the Samson principle.
Like the biblical sense.
Exactly. Breaking chains, pulling down pillars. The argument here is that the logic of Kautilya, the author of the Arthashastra, has basically been imprisoned. It's been caged by history, by religious interpretations, and frankly, by the fact that Sanskrit is incredibly dense.
Yeah, it's really difficult to translate without losing all the nuance.
Right. So the mission isn't to update ChaanAİkya or make him trendy for LinkedIn. It's to unchain his raw logic and hand it back to regular people using modern tools.
So the AI isn't the author here, it's the crowbar.
That's a perfect way to put it. The AI is the tool breaking the text open. And that brings us back to that name you were so skeptical about. The capital AI in the middle isn't just a tech buzzword.
It's a linguistic play, right?
Yes, in Sanskrit, the word Aikya means oneness or unity.
Okay, so it's not ChaanAİkya plus bots. It's unity through technology.
Exactly. It's about finding resonance. But there's a detail in the branding that I think you might have glossed over, and honestly, it's arguably the most important instruction in the whole framework.
What is?
Did you catch the specific way they typed the letter I in the documents?
Oh, you mean the dotted capital I. Yeah, I saw that in the notes. It's Unicode U plus 0130. I honestly just thought it was a typo or a font glitch in the PDF.
It's definitely not a glitch. It's a whole philosophy disguised as a font choice. They refer to it as the small I.
Which signifies what? That we're smaller than the AI.
No, smaller than the truth. So in Sanskrit philosophy, the concept of the self, the ego, is called ahamkara. In this framework, ahamkara is identified as the single biggest barrier to strategic intelligence. Because if you approach these ancient texts thinking, I already know this, or I'm a modern CEO, what can a guy with a quill pen tell me about software?
Then you've already failed before you start.
Precisely. The small I is a visual reminder to check your ego at the door. It represents the ego-less observer.
Yeah.
You have to shrink that I down to just be a data point in the system, not the center of the universe.
If you can't do that, the rest of the framework just won't work.
Exactly.
That's surprisingly profound for a font choice. It really sets the rules of engagement before you even read a word of the text.
And once you've checked your ego, you step into this world they've built. The visual language in the planning documents is striking. They describe this digital valley.
Yeah, I love this part. Because it's not described as a sterile classroom. It's a banyan tree, which represents those deep, ancient roots. But the aerial roots are made of fiber optic light, a digital forest school.
It really sets the mood. Ancient soil, modern circuitry, and inside this valley, they run what they call the strategic engine. This is the core of our deep dive today. It's called the 4V framework.
V. And this is vital because we aren't just chatting with a bot here. We aren't just typing prompts into ChatGPT and seeing what happens. This is a highly structured workflow.
Right, because you can't just plug the Arthashastra into a large language model and expect a viable business plan.
You get hallucinations.
You get hallucinations, you get generic advice. The 4V framework is the quality control engine.
So let's break down the engine, piece by piece. The first V is the voice.
The voice is the source code. In this framework, the voice is always ChaanAİkya, specifically the Arthashastra. And they are incredibly strict about the input. There's a hard rule in the documentation. If it is not in Kangol, cut it.
Archie Kangol. He's a translator, right?
He is the absolute gold standard for English translations of the text. The creators of ChaanAİkya are very specific here. They don't want internet rumors or fake quotes that someone posted on social media.
Right. They want the phonetic power of the Sanskrit and the pure logic
Right.
as close to the original as possible. That's the anchor.
That's the anchor.
Okay, so we have the ancient voice. But as we said, an ancient voice can sound like gibberish or just completely irrelevant. You don't have context.
Yeah.
That brings us to V2, the vibe.
This is where the AI part comes in. You take that ancient voice and you shout it into the digital valley. You use the AI to scan the modern world global news, business trends, bestsellers, to see where that ancient logic is echoing today. This is called resonance.
So it's basically a reality check.
It's validation. The project uses a specific library of resonance. These are verified modern strategy books like The Lean Startup or Good to Great. If ChaanAİkya says do X, the vibe checks if modern successful companies are actually doing X. If they are, then the principle is timeless. If not, maybe it doesn't apply.
I really like that. It proves the logic isn't just a historical curiosity, it's functional. So once we have a match, we move to V3, the value.
This is the translation layer. It's taking that resonance and turning it into specific, actionable advice for a CEO, a manager, a student. It moves from theory to tactic.
It's the so what of the whole process.
Exactly.
And finally, V4, the venture.
The kicker. Because wisdom without application is just a library in a desert. You can't just know the strategy, you have to do something with it. The venture is a prompt or a challenge to test the insight in the real world.
Voice, vibe, value, venture. That's the engine. But abstract frameworks are hard to visualize. I want to see this thing run. Let's take it out for a spin.
Let's do it.
The source material gives us a specific deep dive example titled The Architecture of the New. And it starts with a very specific line of code. Sutra 2.24.24.
Right. This is from the section on the Superintendent of Agriculture. The sutra is Tunapaina Machon.
Oh, you've been practicing that.
A little bit, but listen to the rhythm of it. It's referring to a process for treating seeds. Kautilya says you must soak the seeds in dew by night Todapayanam and dry them in the heat of the sun by day Ushum. And you do this for 7 nights.
Okay, so strictly speaking, that is farming advice.
Yeah.
Wet the seeds, dry the seeds. How do we get from 2,000-year-old farming to modern tech strategy? Because if I tell a software engineer to put his laptop in the dew, he's going to quit.
This is where we hit V2, the vibe. We have to look at the underlying logic, not just the dirt. Kautilya is saying that growth isn't a straight line.
Right.
You don't just put a seed in the ground and hope for the best. You have to temper it. You have absorption, which is the dew, and fortification, which is the heat. Now, if we scan our library of resonance, where do we see that rhythm in modern business?
The lean startup.
Bingo! Eric Ries, the build, measure, learn feedback loop.
So in this analogy, the dew is what? Stealth mode?
Exactly. The do is the internal work. It's the soaking. It's R&D, writing code, thinking deeply. You are absorbing data, but if you stay in the do, the seed rots. You eventually have to expose it to the heat.
And the heat is the market.
The heat is the friction. It's customer complaints. It's the bugs. It's the sun beating down on your idea to see if it's actually tough enough to survive.
The notes bring up a really painful example from the lean startup about this. The story of IMVU, Eric Ries' own company.
Oh man, it's a classic cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
They spent 6 months in the do, they were building an instant messaging add-on, and they were utterly obsessed with interoperability. They wrote thousands of lines of code to make sure their chat worked with AMM, MSN, Yahoo, all the giants at the time.
So they were heads down, just soaking in their own brilliance.
They thought they were building a masterpiece. They had the voice part down, they were working hard, but they completely skipped the heat when they finally launched. Worse than crickets, rejection. Nobody wanted it. The customers didn't care about interoperability. They just wanted to meet new people. The team had to throw away all that code. 6 entire months of work just flushed.
Why? Because they let the seed rot in the dew.
Because they didn't temper it. They feared the heat. They stayed in stealth mode way too long.
That's such a relatable failure, though. I think we've all worked on projects where we just wanted to polish it one more time before showing it to the boss.
That's the hamkara again. That's the ego. I don't want to look bad, so I'll just hide in the dew. But the V3, the value here, is telling us you must balance the two.
So for a CEO, the insight is never launch a raw strategy, but also don't overplan.
Right. An idea that hasn't been tempered will either rot because you're overthinking it, or it will burn in the sun because you launched without substance.
And for a student, or just someone learning a new skill.
The notes call it single piece flow. Absorb a concept, that's the do, and then immediately test it, that's the heat. If you just read textbooks for 4 years without applying anything, you're basically just collecting wet seeds. You're not growing anything.
Collecting wet seeds, that is a vivid image. It really highlights the waste of passive learning. Okay, so that leads us to V4, the venture. The framework actually gives us a 7-day challenge based on this agricultural sutra.
It does. It basically says stop theorizing, identify a seed idea, just one, then spend 3 days in the do, gather data, research, but tell absolutely no one, keep it internal. Then spend 4 days in the heat. Pitch it to critics. Seek rejection. Don't look for praise, look for the burn. Because, as the quote in the text says, a seed hits the soil only after it meets the stars and the sun.
That is surprisingly practical. It turns a mystic chant into a weekly calendar.
That's the Samson principle at work right there.
Now, we've talked a lot about the lean startup, but the library of resonance for this project includes some other heavy hitters that I think are crucial to understanding the breadth of this. The sources mention Good to Great by Jim Collins and Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. I really want to dig into those because they feel very different from the startup vibe.
They are different, but the resonance is just as strong. Let's look at Good to Great.
Classic business text. Everyone have it on their shelf whether they've actually read it or not.
Yeah, true. But look at one of Collins' core findings, Level 5 leadership. He studied companies that made the leap from average to spectacular, and he found that the leaders of those companies were almost never the rock star CEOs with the big personalities.
Right, they weren't the celebrity types on the magazine covers.
No. He compares them to Abraham Lincoln. Shy, awkward, reserved. Collins describes them as having a paradoxical blend of personal humility and professional will.
Wait a minute. That sounds exactly like the small I philosophy we started with.
It's a direct match. The small I is about removing the ego to allow for the greater good. Lincoln didn't let his ego get in the way of the nation. He was an ego-less observer of the political reality.
So ChaanAİkya would have liked Lincoln.
ChaanAİkya would have hired Lincoln because ChaanAİkya was obsessed with the king being a servant to the state. In the Arthashastra, the king has no personal life. His happiness lies entirely in the happiness of his subjects. That is level 5 leadership. It's 2,400 years old, but Jim Collins rediscovered it in the data.
And Collins also talks about the flywheel, right? That massive heavy wheel you have to push.
Yes. And the flywheel is just another rhythm, isn't it? It parallels the dew and heat cycle we just talked about. You push, and initially it barely moves. But you keep tempering it, keep pushing, and eventually the momentum takes over. It's consistent force, not an overnight miracle.
Okay, that fits perfectly. Now, what about Crossing the Chasm? That's the Bible for tech marketing. Where does an ancient Indian strategist fit into Silicon Valley marketing?
This one is fascinating because it connects to Kautilya's views on war. So Jeffrey Moore's whole thesis is about the chasm between the early adopters, the visionaries, and the mainstream market, the pragmatists.
Right. The visionaries think your tech is cool. The pragmatists just want it to work without breaking. And most companies die falling into the gap between them.
Correct. And Moore says you cannot treat them the same. You need a D-Day strategy. You have to focus on a tiny beachhead, a very specific segment, and win that completely before you try to take the whole market. You concentrate all your force on one point.
That sounds incredibly military.
It is, and it resonates perfectly with Kautilya's theories on conquest. Kautilya was rigorous about classifying allies and enemies. He famously advised identifying the weakest neighbor for expansion. You don't attack the strongest king first, you secure the beachhead.
So Moore's pragmatist is Kautilya's ally who needs stability, and the visionary is maybe the wild tribe.
Exactly. Kautilya would say you cannot use the same diplomacy on a wild tribe that you use on a settled king. Just like Moore says you can't use the same marketing on a tech nerd that you use on a department head. The vibe here is that segmentation isn't just a marketing tactic, it's a survival strategy.
If you try to cross the chasm without a beachhead, without that D-Day focus, you get slaughtered.
Just like an army marching without a plan.
It's amazing how these things layer on top of each other. It's like these modern authors are rediscovering laws of physics that ChaanAİkya wrote down 24 centuries ago.
That's the beauty of the digital valley. When you strip away the Sanskrit and the business jargon, the human behavior underneath is identical. People are people. Strategy is strategy.
You also mentioned the Valley View in the notes, connecting to Osterwalder's business model generation. That's the book with all the squares and sticky notes.
Right, the business model canvas. That's about visualization. Osterwalder asks you to put your entire business value propositions, channels, revenue on one single sheet of paper.
So you can see the whole machine at once.
And the ChaanAİkya visual does the same thing. It asks you to see the valley, the mountains, which represent structure, the roots, which represent history, and the data flowing through it all in one frame. It's about seeing the forest and the trees, or I guess the forest and the fiber optics.
The forest and the fiber optics. That's the bumper sticker for this deep dive.
It really is.
So let's bring this home for the person listening right now. We've covered a lot. Ancient seeds, modern startups, humble leaders, military marketing. It's a dense mix. What is the main takeaway?
It comes back to the core mission of the Digital Forest School. We are trying to build a bridge. ChaanAİkya provides the voice, the timeless principles of human nature that just don't change. AI provides the Bible, the ability to scan our massive, complex world to find where those principles apply today. ChaanAİkya is the value, the synthesis that makes it understandable.
But the listener, you are the venture.
You are the venture. None of this matters if you don't do anything with it. If you just listen to this deep dive and feel smart, you're just soaking in the dew.
I want to go back to that visual mentioned in the planning documents, the Valley drone.
Yeah. They describe these low-angle shots at dawn, monsoon lighting. Very atmospheric.
It feels very cinematic. But why? Why does a strategy framework need to look like a movie?
I think it's to emphasize that this is a journey. It's not a lecture in a dusty classroom. It's an exploration. We are hacking through the jungle of history to find tools we can actually use today. It's supposed to feel adventurous because learning should be an adventure. It shouldn't be a chore.
So here is the final provocative thought for you to take away. And I want you to really be honest with yourself about this. Think about the major project you are working on right now. Maybe it's a startup, maybe it's a report, maybe it's just a life change.
Ask yourself, is it rotting in the dew? Are you hiding in stealth mode, overplanning, researching forever because you're afraid to show it to anyone? Are you letting the ahamkara, the ego, protect you from failure?
Or, on the flip side, are you burning in the heat? Did you launch it without any substance? Are you running around trying to sell something that has no roots?
Remember the Samson principle. This logic, this dual tempering, is there to be used. It's not there to be admired in a museum. Unchain it.
Find your small I. Be the egoless observer and start your own 7-day cycle. 3 days of dew, 4 days of heat. See what grows.
A seed hits the soil only after it meets the stars and the sun.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll see you in the valley.